welcome. Hi, how you doing? Welcome to Toward a Quality of Life. We're coming to you in the year 2011, the month of June. Half of it has not been quite like summer. Of course, our weather is going to be getting worse. You can count on that. As the months and years go on, we're going to be in graver and graver circumstances with our weather. But that is how it goes, and I even had to put the heat on most nights thus far in June, except for last night. Last night we sort of had a true June day and evening. Yes. So today I'm going to continue my series consolidating and bringing it home, hopefully to you, to people that don't want to be convinced, who think I'm probably horrible and wrong and not to their way of thinking whatsoever about the current administration and the person who is president in Washington, D.C. But the data and the evidence keeps on accumulating, and here it is coming to you more consolidated. Why the person in Washington, D.C. is not good for your health, welfare, and future. Before I start, I want to remember to tell you to say no to plastic, and plastic as it leaches into our food, even in its manufacture, and of course in its cluttering up the environment and causing all kinds of painful agonies to animals, etc. Has so many bad qualities about it every which way you look at it. So remember, we've got to be getting off of plastic. And just this week, the government said that styrene, those containers, those polystyrene containers, white ones that you get for takeout food or you drink hot liquids from, those they have finally said are carcinogenic and cause other kinds of problems. And it's surprising to me that one could not just, I don't happen to have one of those cups here, but it's surprising to me that one could not just touch it, feel it, put it against the lips, and understand that, geez, this isn't for the human body. It's not biological. It doesn't go with the chemistry and cellular composition of the body. But anyway, the government has now said that. They're trying to say that the amounts we get in the food parts is not the main problem because those amounts, are each time we use them are relatively small, but they are in a lot of other products as well, products that we use every day. And I just want you to remember, please, that every day drinking from these and all other sources of bad materials hitting your body in one way, shape, or form do add up, and they are all a cause for very great concern. But styrene is a decided no-no, as it's part of the petroleum-based family of materials that come to us like plastic and so on. And anyway, be aware that these things are not good for your health, and say no to them. So here we go, at least to plastic. And if you have styrene, I mean, just rip the styrene, rip it, put it to your tongue, see what it's like. Boy, it shouldn't be part of the human body, human constitution in any way, shape, or form. Back to our main subject of the day, which is for the lecture purpose titled Colorblinded Rapture. Colorblinded meaning that both black and white Americans are to a great extent colorblinded, and rapture meaning that someone makes you feel that you are going into a better place, a favorable place, a lovely kind of place to be. We talk about being enraptured by someone or something. It's not quite like charisma, and as far as this president goes, in the year 2011, I don't see him as charismatic. Many people call him that. I'm not sure that's exactly what attracts people. It's more like a rapture. It's more like a cult. It's more like a whatever you say, we believe you. All you have to do is say it. A great, great belief. And I would like to show during this lecture that this person who is president does not talk in ways that you can count on, in ways that are reliable, in ways that are honest and clear and sincere. He makes an image for you to hold on to, one that is very appealing to you somehow, and there you go with your colorblinded Rapture. I also used the music of Fela Kuti last time in the beginning and end of my show, a song called Zombie, where he's talking about people just not being aware enough, being zombies, while governments get to do whatever it is they're intent on doing. And I'd also say, too, that while the president, of course, I'm going to be talking about is someone I'm going to be faulting and putting blame on, we've got to put blame on ourselves, too, no matter where we sit, because we certainly are like sheep. If you get your information from something like the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald or the evening news or the radio news, you are decidedly not going to know anything. And that sounds amazing, but this is a very complicated and fast world. We're much too busy to really know what's going on the way we might be needing to. And so you're just getting an image of what persons are wanting to set into your mind, and you believe them. You have faith. You have rapture. You are colorblinded. I might say about us as we go along with things that we are we are kind of sheepish. We are sheepish. Not everybody is feeling this way. There has been a small amount of drop-off in support for the president among African Americans, and a much larger amount of drop-off among independents. Some drop-off among Democrats, complaining quite bitterly these days about him, and certainly a lot of drop-off among Republicans as well. And don't forget, he did get votes from all of those sectors, and particularly independents are needed as part of his base in any kind of election. So you saw how he took a trip to Puerto Rico the other day, an in-and-out fast trip. I heard Jon Stewart, that I'm not particularly fond of that show, believe me, but I saw a snippet go by where he was making fun of the quick trip to Puerto Rico that the president made to have that reflect on states here where there are many persons living now from Puerto Rico as part of his strategy for his re-election campaign. Which we'll see what happens. Whatever happens, we have to live with it, but we shall see. Now, I want to say to you, when I'm standing before you telling you these things, you can say, what's my agenda? What's my reason? Maybe that I'm white. You could call me racist. Maybe it's a racist reason that I'm coming to you and finding so much fault and being alarmed and finding so much egregious behavior on the part of this administration. Not that others are not egregious, are not egregious as well, but the halo effect of this person, that he is still so popular that people think he's a nice guy. And I've tried to tell you too that nice, not so much. Joyless, yes. Kind of, people talked about him being cool all the time. I've told you it's not cool, it's cold, and I'm not going to go into the examples of that, but this is a very unusual, odd person, very queer, very, very unique, and not so on the basis of race, on the basis of any race. A person such as this, with the way he goes about things, the way he comports himself, the way he only speaks in measured terms, in very controlled circumstances, and the seeming difficulty putting all together what it is exactly, except for the high platitudes about how great or aloft and moving forward we're supposed to be, when in fact evidence bespeaks exactly the opposite. And I'd like you to think about, as I'm talking about this, for people who feel they've got a skin in the game, that's quite a pun on the race issue, isn't it? But people who feel that he's their man, I want to say, what has he done for you lately, or what has he done that's come back to help you lately? And so even if inadvertently, and where's the future going to be for people that are hoping for something to come out of the skies and help them, or some way to be better off. Does it look like the end result or the forward-moving result is going to be better than the deep, deep problems this administration has been digging us into, the dismantling, the disassembling of our culture, of our economy, of our military, of our space program, of our nuclear storage enterprise, and so forth. He reminds me of a child who takes apart everything but then doesn't put them back together, and you have to ask why. A lot of things are a very big mess right now. Agencies are a mess in what's going on in them. Peace talks with Korea, with Israel are a mess. The economy is a mess. I've even read lately that the president stopped having details given to him on a daily basis about the economy. He stopped getting economic reports. Is it because he couldn't stand what they were saying, or felt it didn't matter anyway? I mean, so you got to be much more aware. You absolutely. Now, maybe you won't come to the conclusions I'm coming to, but you've got to know very much more. Otherwise, you can't say that you know and you hope and you believe and so forth and so on. And I want to say also, too, that when I talk to you, whatever my agenda, why ever I'm saying this, why ever I take this point of view, I'm not speaking with corporations behind me. I'm not speaking with people who need a favor for me. If anything, people will not like me. But there's not really influencing on what I have to say. I am careful, however, to try to not alienate people. I would like to speak more stringently, more provocatively, more just from the gut in any old kind of way. But I'm trying to be careful to not alienate. So in that sense, and I do have curbs on how much I say and the extent to which I go, but technically speaking, compared to most persons speaking to you, there are no controls on me, thank God, and nothing restricting me to be careful about what I say. And in that vein, I'm just going to get off on something I saw in the news the other day, how Apple stores have control over their salespersons and helpers in the store. Read about that sometime. And I've noticed it's kind of creepy when you go into Apple, how systematized. So this is the world we're living in. Talk about influence over people. They literally are given the words to say who can speak, when they can speak. All this is coordinated like a template. When you walk in that store, there's very little that's going on just casually, impromptu, spontaneously, and natural flow of humans. So it's really creepy, and there's an example of severe control. So back to this guy who's president of the United States and his great success thus far in destroying the country. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so much worse off, as I talk to you today, than the day this person became president of the United States. At that time, gas was $1.83 a gallon, the debt was 9-point-something trillion, and unemployment was 7.2%. Now, of course, gas much higher, unemployment much higher, and the debt at $14+ trillion. And when he proposed spending for the coming fiscal year, he added many more amounts of money that he wanted to spend on top of that, even though people are threatening to downgrade us, calling us on par with Greece, which is at the lowest rating any country can have. Why? Because our debts are getting so big that even when you count in all the taxes, all the revenue a government would make in a given year, it's starting to be that the debt cannot be handled. The liabilities so far exceed the revenues or the potential revenues, with an economy in very much doubt, that people are saying, hey, this reality is really dangerous and really at the end of the line. So we are bankrupting this great country. Why should we be bankrupt? Look at us. Go to other countries. Look at us. No matter where you go, what we have done to date, people have homes with running water, with televisions, with computers, with lawnmowers, with you name it, with top quality food, relatively speaking, even though all the cancer and other kind of harmful things are in our food, and it is very polluted by that standard. But we are a very developed country, and we did this together no matter what our means, no matter what our level of income. Why should this country be going down the tube and becoming poor? For what reason? Why are the policies or the lack of policies where there should be some being allowed to exist that is causing us so much extra hardship and pain? And guess who gets the most hardship and pain? The people who are at the lowest part of the economic ladder. That's who gets it. And when there ain't no more money, guess whose stuff gets cut? And guess where cuts are being made across the nation? In Medicaid and so on. And as I always have said to you in previous lectures, who's going to pay for the handicapped? Who's going to pay for the nursing homes? Who's going to pay for the autistic children? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's unbelievable the level at which, even if you're only getting by on Social Security benefits for some illness or whatever, it's incredible how much we have managed to achieve for people, including those with meager circumstances. Buy them the best wheelchairs that they may need, which are very expensive. Have them live in apartments that are suitable for wheelchairs. Have them go to sessions of consultation for whatever they need. It's incredible what we have managed to achieve in this country, no matter which level of the spectrum you are on. And if you want to see poor, we've got to go, we'll see what real poverty is. Oh boy, let's go to Mexico City and the dumps that people live on and the trash that they pick through for a bite to eat. Okay, so here we are becoming a great failure. Out of the blue, why? We were not a failure in January '09. We had some problems, but our economy was not failing. Yes, there were problems, but this is like disaster, disruption, disassembly. Now, as far as the president is concerned, I have said to you before that the number one thing, I'm going to say several things, major outlines. The number one thing about Mr. Obama is for Obama. Okay? So let me give you some examples of how Obama is for Obama, just to remind you. Remember when he suddenly gave that high-end earner tax break, when he renewed it in the fall, when he saw what happened in the November elections, even though that's something he's presumably so very much against, because he saw, oh my goodness, he's got to shift, and he did it without his party. He did it without Anthony Weiner and the rest of the crew. And boy, were they upset. Boy, were they upset and felt betrayed that he went ahead and made a deal without even consulting them, which, as I've told you before, he tends to have his own organization within an organization. In fact, he has said at times that he would prefer to be president of China because then you don't have to deal with people. You can just do directly what you want to do. And that's just it. This is a guy who feels he has dibs on people's lives, that he and his wife can tell them what to do, how to live, and how it's going to be. That's not what a president is about historically. Historically, a president is about taking care of business so that the country can flourish on its own, taking care of military needs, taking care of danger needs, cabinet appointments, and so on. That's what a president is about in the United States of America historically. Now, look at other ways. Obama is for Obama, how he did that, supposed killing of bin Laden, which I guess he did, but I thought he was so favorable to not offending Muslims and threw the body in the ocean, which is an impossibility according to the Muslim religion. I'm sure that didn't make a lot of people feel very good. And of course it destroyed evidence, and furthermore, it took away what might have been a very valuable resource, which he used to talk about, you know, being able to get information out of people in more humane ways than he thought was going on. But But here, for example, are the kind of things he said just to show how he will go between. And he's got a whole history of going between, and including being in the Senate and voting present in order not to have to go between the two and not being anywhere on something. A little less than 2 years ago, he and his people charged and attempted to court-martial 3 Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 6, the team that he used to kill bin Laden. And that was because one of the terrorists that had been captured complained that they punched him and bloodied his nose, and they were going to court-martial 3 of the SEALs from that same team that he used on the basis of this. And what he said about that, the SEAL Team 6, which is the team that took down presumably bin Laden, he said, in the past, when he wasn't the president, Navy SEAL Team 6 is Cheney's private assassination team. What he said in 2011, after the event, I put together SEAL Team 6 to take out bin Laden. And by the way, many people were commenting how when he talked about SEAL Team 6 and the so-called mission, how many times he said, I did this and I did that. Meanwhile, it's the SEAL team that did it, and all the history bringing it up has to be given credit as well. And usually people are gracious that way, and they'll say, we couldn't have had better guys. Thank goodness for them if it weren't for them. But he kept saying, I did this and I did that. So whereas it was Cheney's private assassination team in 2008, now it was he puts it together to take out bin Laden. Then he said in 2008, bin Laden is innocent until proven guilty and must be captured and given a fair trial. His own words. His own words. He throws the body into the sea, presumably, in spite of the Muslim prohibition against such a thing. Very great prohibition. You cannot do something at sea like that with Muslims. And certainly the most strict ones as well. And here he said he's innocent until proven guilty is what he used to say all the time. Can you imagine? To say the least of the valuable resource, presumably, this guy might have been. And now in 2011, he said, I authorized SEAL Team 6 to kill bin Laden. Why? Why? To kill him and dump the body in the sea. Okay, in 2008, he said, Guantanamo is entirely unnecessary and the detainees should not be interrogated. That's the prison that still exists on the island of Cuba. And now, in 2011, he says vital intelligence was obtained from Guantanamo detainees that led to our locating bin Laden. Here he's saying they should get fair trials, they shouldn't be interrogated, they shouldn't be in Guantanamo. Then now he's saying, oh, we got valuable information from the people there as part of this operation. So I'm trying to show you Obama, I could go on and on, is for Obama. Obama is for Obama, the moves he makes. And that's the first thing he is. But then he's for this thing, and he's certainly giving payback to the United States. This social justice kind of vengeance, retribution, be the trial and the jury deliverer as well. He's for social justice. I will tell you, as other things I'm going to outline, that he's narcissist. I believe he has some character pathology. And he certainly has a proclivity toward Muslims and the Muslim religion. I mean, which is fine. If he's a Muslim, just say so. But you wouldn't go out of your way doing special favors as he has, which I have touched on before and probably will touch on a little later in this lecture. You certainly wouldn't. I mean, if he were doing this for Catholics or Mormons, we would say, what the heck's going on? In fact, when he's doing it for Muslims, we say, what the heck's going on? Social justice, like they're going to make amends like it's a power struggle, and if you haven't got power, it's not because you didn't study hard and live on nickels and dimes until you could get on your feet and make something of yourself. No, it's because you don't have power. And now in some ways there's some truth to all of that, but it's kind of a very negative and nasty kind of philosophy to take from persons who have and give to persons who don't. And persons in this country who don't, as I say, not that we can't do better, do get a lot out of this country. We do have to find ways, I do believe, to make more people get more things out of the country, but certainly not by a social justice means. And this social justice stuff is, in line with sort of Marxist theology, which he's been accused of. And it is certainly a payback, people that really loathe the United States. And he's not been fond of the United States. And his wife's own words prior to the very public phase of the campaign made many scathing statements about the United States and her sort of contempt for it, if you will. So, but we're getting paid back mightily because while he might be trying to make things a mess like they've become and are becoming worse day by day, or he just doesn't know any better, or he's somewhere in between, I think. So, and also to put together and understand the moves he makes, you've got to scratch your head and try to figure out, well, who's he working for and why is he doing these things, and come up with some kind of reason. One of the people that's visited the White House many, many times, international financier, who's very busy working on bringing the United States down, Mr. George Soros, just had a conference a few weeks ago with major players of the world, how to devalue the dollar further, how to bring the United States down economically and every other way so that it's not a player and determiner in world affairs as it is now. It's the top dog who kind of is the leader of the world. But boy, a lot of damage has been done to that sort of and people don't like what the aims and goals are of the United States. So I don't know what their aims are, but anyway, they're working feverishly. Soros does this by contributing money to campaigns that are trying to have judges appointed so that there'll be more of the philosophy. What else is he doing? He's involved in giving a lot of money to media outlets that are of the left, very left-leaning persuasion. Lots and lots of money. He's spending money to have media outlets attack Fox and dig dirt up on them and so forth. So he's very big, and he's been at the White House many, many times. And this circle is a bunch of people that have been around for a long time, have been involved with each other, very left-leaning, and coming out now super left-leaning, which is as radical as super right-leaning. Both are radical. And there are other players like Podesta, Panetta, and so forth, many, many. And we're not going to go into that now, but hey, get on the internet and start reading. Know what the heck your life is coming to. No, you can't be more informed than to know a lot about what's happening politically in a country. It's all about the values and the way we're going to live. And right now, all you have is an image presented to you, a colorblinded rapture, that just says, follow this guy, don't question why. Geez, the evidence doesn't look very good. Gee, my life isn't getting better, it's getting much harder. But anyway, follow this guy. And he's kind of a lawless guy. There are laws, there are laws or situations where they just choose to ignore them. They won't come to Congress to testify when they're subpoenaed. There are big fights. They won't give information about intelligence information to persons in Congress. They won't prosecute, in one case, a case of voter intimidation. They said if they didn't like the law something about the Domestic Marriage Act, just not enforce it, and so forth. They haven't made a budget 2 years in a row. Outrageous the way they make the laws, like the health care bill. It's incredible, and it really stretches the limits and goes into territory that you have to wonder, is this really something that is correct to be done at all? And also bring us to the brink with these late night and exhaustion kinds of marathons about them. And it's not pretty. Then there's the Chicago connection. Do not underestimate that. In fact, the re-election headquarters are in Chicago, very big. And Google gave a special advertising deal to the president the other day. Google's like this. He knows he's got the people he needs. Goldman Sachs, General Electric, Google. They're right in there with him. And he's getting all the deals. He's got media under his wing, media that die for him, media that whatever you want, Mr. President. What do you want me to say? I'll say it. Newsweek, Time Magazine, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and many, many others, the Huffington Post, even when they're critical of him. Oh, and that Chicago connection. What a connection. We've gone into some of that history in the past. You know, I was thinking today, too, how when the Blago situation broke, way back when it first happened, and he was accused of trying to sell get money for appointing someone a senator. Remember, I don't know if you saw this, when they put the cameras on Mr. Obama and a couple of people with him, I think Rahm Emanuel was with him at that time sitting, and he said he would get back to people in a couple of weeks as to whether he had had anything to do with it. And any tapes of what he might have done have not been allowed into court during that trial. And there was some newspaper account of him meeting with Blago the day after, or having a meeting set up to meet with Blago the day after he got elected. And some of this stuff that was in the Chicago newspapers has disappeared off the internet since that time. He teaches Saul Alinsky at the University of Chicago, where he was a lecturer. And Saul Alinsky is about how to make a revolution that is furtive, that is undercover, that is quiet, that is nonviolent, but from within rots the system away and brings about the desired result. You have his Justice Department. What a Justice Department, being exposed now for having allowed guns purposely to go into the hands of Mexican drug people and other kinds of criminals. All these guns, big, powerful, the very heavy-duty advanced weaponry that's out there in so-called guns today. And there is an investigation. There's a lot of stalling going on. Why would you do that? Supposedly it was to track where the guns are going and thereby get at people. In the meanwhile, it doesn't seem to have done that at all, and one of our own agents got killed by one of these guns, it is said. And you have to wonder, what is an administration doing sending thousands of guns into the hands of people south of the border? Why would you do that? Is that not a curious question? So now the other part of that I failed to mention, that's very, very important to this whole picture of character analysis, Obama being for Obama, tendency to Muslims, disassembling the economy, is the stealth nature. That's what makes it that extra. It's kind of like when a priest is found to be not holy or a judge is found to be unfair. It doesn't sit well. Those things don't go together. And this person now and always is stealth. He's doing things surreptitiously. You can't see him doing, and he's making so sure that the image remains one that he wants you to see. And it's a very superficial, platitudinous image. You see, when he tries to explain supposedly like the healthcare law or green products, nobody gets it. I mean, you can't tell he's bumbling or whatever, but he doesn't really explain it, to say the least of the inaccuracies or falsehoods that he perpetrates when he does. But he's not one to give you the gist of the matter. And there you are, just stealthily dismantling, and all his records being sealed. I must bring that up. That doesn't make you say, why? We know everything about our presidents. Our presidents are ours. They are our public servants. They are not our bosses. They are not our bosses to tell us what to do. We are their bosses to tell them what to do. And by the way, regarding the birth certificate, many specialists have come forward thus far and said the current one presented is a fraud. And there are several reasons why. And of course, you need the original to prove it. And nobody's been able to obtain supposed original. What we have is seen as a copy. But if you one very compelling piece of evidence is if you look at the current document that was presented and make it very large, you will see that first of all, you can tell it's been tampered with because it's got big shadows around it, which I guess in PDF is how it would look when it's been changed, altered, or layered. I don't know exactly how the details of that go, but that's part of it. But you can see, even I can see, that letters do not come, within one word, do not come from the same script of a particular machine that it's being done with. You can see that they're different. That's a very good tale. And the other, one other thing, there's many things, but another one is they state the country of Kenya on there as his country of birth. And Kenya was not Kenya at the time he was born. It had a name of a very different place. It did not become Kenya till later. And by the way, the president holds a Connecticut driver's license. No one has seemed to dispute this yet. I don't know, but theoretically that's supposed to be what it is. And he's had another one or two in his life as well. And he's never lived in Connecticut, and he's never worked there. And a Social Security expert has said that it's against the law. You have to be a citizen and working in the state to have that Social Security number. So the stealthiness, so that's what makes this, you know, it's bad enough if it just all the damage is being done and how bad off this country unnecessarily is becoming. But then the fact that the person doing it might be doing it in a stealth manner, and then most people are just raptured with it, don't mind not knowing much, just the image, some false idea, some hope, and no evidence. In fact, evidence to the contrary. Now back to this character pathology, which is a term out of psychology of a variety of kinds of things that can be listed under that nomenclature. But in this case, as I've spoken to you in the past, I'd be talking about narcissism. We all have narcissism. We all have to care about ourselves. We all have to take care of ourselves and survive first and foremost. That's why in the end every man is an island, and it is about me, and I to some degree. But then it becomes like a sort of a pathology, some made-up, unrealistic idea of greatness, of even without true, real practical accomplishments that you can and bite into and chew it and use it in a fruitful way. So we're talking here about narcissistic personality, and people who are narcissistic think unusually so well of themselves, so high and mighty. And I would say that the president's head is so big that he can barely fit through the auditorium door. And another feature often of this kind of unrealistic, magical thinking, great, idea, controlled idea, and specialness idea is for these people to be bored. And I remember Harry Reid saying how when he used to look at Obama in the Senate, he said it was obvious the guy was bored with the Senate and needed to do greater things, as did his aide that you don't hear much about these days, Valerie Jarrett, talked in a quote that I gave you once about how he's too intelligent, he's bored with most things. Well, no. He doesn't get down to the nitty-gritty, roll up your sleeves, stay at your desk, sit in Washington, do the hard work, really understand the healthcare law, which last I looked several months ago already had 1,000 pages of rules and is said to be having 10,000 pages of rules by the time it's done. Such a shabby, malformed bill, ridiculous thing to perpetrate on a country for the sake of saying that you got them health care. Such a messed up bill, pushed through with such alacrity and lack of consideration for both the public, the Congress, and the reality of what was in it. So you get someone who's not interested very much or is way up in the greatness, just that the things will happen by telling people to get them done, which is how he does business. Not him knowing enough so he can keep a handle on it and be a true participant and a true engager and knower and former of what is going on in the country. So he's kind of, he's riding around in his plane night and day. He's been doing that forever. He's got sports teams coming to the White House constantly. They have parties galore over there, including when the Gulf oil needed to be handled. He was having very special parties and so on. So he kind of is above it. That's where he is. He's above it. He's magical thinking. Things will just happen because he says so in his mind. And he's a joyless character. I believe his controlled demeanor, his very staid demeanor, has a big influence on depression for the country. In other words, people need inspiration out of leaders. They need a leader to say, or not the words so much as the spirit. Come on, we're going to do this, guys. Don't you worry. This is what we're doing. We've got some time. No. It's more, there is a bump in the road. This is joyless. People need something to give them optimism to go on. So he's some part of the factor, among many others, involved in the malaise of this country. And he's very heavy-handed. If you do something he doesn't like, or he doesn't like your point of view, or you say something in the press, you're out. He blocks you. That's it. He said to one person in the Congress, I remember early on, I forgot if it was African American, someone in the party, his party, when the guy wouldn't go along with him, he goes, "We're keeping score, bro." He told him, "We're keeping score, bro." He said at one time, a couple of years ago, about something I can't remember, he said, in fighting for something, he said to the people, sort of acorn people, "If they bring a knife, we bring a gun," was his quotation. He said to Netanyahu one day at the White House, last year, I believe, he said, "I'm going to eat dinner. If you have any questions, let me know." He left him there. And Netanyahu didn't know what to do, and he left the White House. He's also intimated, he said as much in his speeches, reward your friends and punish your enemies. Richard Nixon, can you hear me now? Richard Nixon, can you hear me now? This is a chilling thing. A president must work with all sides. A president must be negotiable. A president must, they say meetings at the White House, the rare ones when Republicans come over, because they didn't quite go for that have a drink and yuck it up and then nothing else, did they? But the rare times that they do, they call it cold and frosty. Yes. So you do have to give, and that's another aspect that he doesn't, separate from this, that he doesn't like to give, but he's heavy-handed. He'll slap it down. And he's into curtailing speech as much as he can, and he's having a lot of media from within, making their own stories, their own ways. and controlling and trying to get people to exclude and running a war against anything. That's how he's going about in a Saul Alinsky method to carpet the United States with what he is trying to put on to the people of the United States. God save us. Secrecy. He is running a very, very secret administration. Did you know that? They say it's more secret, it's worse than George Bush. In other words, he's been compared to George Bush time and again. They said, rather than unlike him, he's very like him in so many ways, only more so. And one of those is secrecy. For example, divulging all guests who come to the White House. One time he got an award for transparency, and he wouldn't allow any cameras in to see it. More than once this has happened. There was one time he went to Chicago, and he stayed at a guy's house, supposedly, who lived supposedly across the street from Minister Farrakhan. And the reporters, of course, were following, trying to see. They never saw him come or go. They never saw who he was with or what. Who knows what he was doing there that weekend in Chicago. They never caught it. And by the way, he's way harder on whistleblowers. They go after whistleblowers in the government with a vengeance. This Justice Department and, excuse me, this administration, they go after whistleblowers with a vengeance. There's one trial going on right now. I forgot what the issue is. And these are people trying to say where the government is wrong. And the Patriot Act, it's more of a Patriot Act than it's ever been. They're getting powers. They can tape you, record you, follow you anytime, anywhere. And then, the fact that what he does is he makes a mess, which I've alluded to already. And I'd like to bring up that, for example, with Russia, now they're getting much closer with China. They're demanding things that are really outrageous and impossible to give them, hopefully, of us. And all this so-called reset, and all this time he was working on this so-called START treaty, that he gave away some information of England against their will to Russia to get it to happen, and so forth and so on, and wouldn't show a lot of the internal documentation to the Congress as to whether they would be able to vote for it based on that information. And now, and also put aside anything about the economy, anything about being involved in the healthcare legislation, which was very wrong to do from the get-go, day one. Don't forget that. Don't forget that this president has not been attending to the very important needs. He didn't attend to the Afghanistan war for a long time. He didn't attend to the economy and jobs for a long time. He didn't attend to even filling the Treasury Department with very needed people in the beginning. He went off on things that are wildly disparate from the needs of the country. Don't forget that. And every time he has said, oh, I'm going to concentrate on jobs. Does he? No. He's going to Puerto Rico to get votes from the Puerto Rican population. He's talking about green things and trying to get more advancement for his liaison with corporations involved in that and so forth. And it's really anything but. Don't forget, he has not paid attention to what the needs are of the country all along, and even now. Now he'll pull it out of the hat because he's good at that. He's an illusionist. He'll pull something out of the hat like he did with bin Laden to show you, here's my card on that. Here's my ace in the hole. He will come up with something like that as regards jobs in the economy, because every time he's in a pinch, like the tax breaks he gave at the last minute, he will do something when he's desperate enough to do it. Making a mess and things with Russia, supposedly a reset with Russia, it's more like Russia's telling us everybody's taking advantage. China's saying outrageous things about us in the news, telling us what to do. Okay, now many people have noticed that a lot of the persons he set out to have communication with, Foster, and so on, are people that we conventionally called enemies of the United States. And when it came to persons who are friends, he dissed them. He dissed them. Yes, he did, mightily and royally. He ended up making up sort of, in a way, to England when he went on that Queen thing recently. But many people he sort of slapped in the face effectively, who have been longtime friends, and you always need friends whether you like them or not, but sort of courting the enemies. And the other day he had a very brutal and across the board known dictator of one of the countries of Africa, I've forgotten which country. He had him come to the White House the other day. He's not on very good terms with Angela Merkel. He wasn't on good terms with Sarkozy there for a while, and so forth and so on. Magical thinking. As part of this narcissistic personality, that by just telling people and having, just the idea that he can achieve this, but never anything practical. This is very much like him. If you look at his history in Chicago, whatever he touched, a little bit that he did touch, it ended up not good. Not good. Nothing can be said, pointed to, this was an achievement. No. And this is what's going to happen here, too. You can't point to anything that this was an achievement. You can say the health care bill was an achievement of sorts, but when you see the trouble that it's giving us, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, and what it's going to do to you, and how, of all systems possible, this crazy creature called the health care bill is a perpetration of nastiness on the United States of America. So a magical thinking that it all somehow can just get done. When the BP oil was pouring out into what is now a parking lot in Louisiana Gulf, he said, plug the damn hole. Excuse me? When you got a situation like that, do you think someone can just go down and plug the damn hole? He said to corporations one day not long ago, he says, hire people. Oh, really? Think of any corporation that you're in, or self-employment, or even one you work in. How many people understand, especially in smaller terms, that you can't just go hire people when money is really tight and you got all the costs associated with hiring someone, how you just don't hire people because someone tells you that it's a good idea. And he's a risk taker, and he pushes things to the edge, too. That's another trait that he has. Well, back to the disdain for the United States of America, separate from his narcissism that I've spoken with at length in another lecture. His disdain for the United States. This president has effectively opened the door to our vault of our treasury, some of it only paper IOUs, some of it make-believe printing money. This president has opened the door to our vault, and all the money has been taken. Where is all that money? And I say to you, people like these professional unionists who go to any kind of a demonstration that they're called upon to perform at, and they're getting very outspoken. The other day they were in Wisconsin, and they said, let's do what they did in Germany. Let's kill this Adolf, whatever his name is, governor. They were using some kind of language like that the other day. They're getting more and more. They think they're going to go to the banks and other places and force people to give up. Why do you blame the banks and the mortgage companies? Certainly they are to blame. But who is more to blame than the government of the United States of America, the man in Washington, D.C., who has allowed the vault to be opened and everybody to take it? It was like, here, America's for free. And he gave to the world. People always forget. $108 million. Right away, when he first came in, he made the Congress give over $108 billion to the IMF, went out the door. Here, oh, I got my hands on the money now. Take it, take it. We don't need it. We are downsizing. We are downgrading. We're going to become just like any other non-entity country, any other non-exceptional country. We're going to become poorer. We're going to equalize things in the world. We're going to do social justice. We're going to do payback. No respect for the money. That's your money. That's everybody's money. That's handicapped people's money. That's Medicaid people's money. That's nursing home money. That's roads and bridges money. You name it. That's Social Security money. No respect for our money. He even came up with big plans to spend even more money in the next budget. Now, not talking about that very much. Blame the government, those of you protesting. Blame the government. Why do they give it? Is not the source of it the government? And there's nothing left. And this poor excuse, this child, this little kid running the Treasury named Timothy Geithner, who never has something you need to hear to say, is one of the few left standing there, keeping those doors wide open, having given secretly many billions of dollars, special favors not even on the books that we knew about, to banks, to his friends, to the people that he fronts, the people he fronts for. Where is the money, I ask you? Where is all this stuff that has been given and sequestered? What we have is price inflation, because in order to help these same people out, interest rates have been kept essentially at zero in this country. So all the people who had a little bit of money and wanted to play it safe and kept it in the bank have gotten worse off, while these low rates have helped the people who would have been and should have been worse off when their losses hit the fan. And money being printed and not yet let loose on the economy, but being printed, and Treasury buying its own security instruments. Like, this is cuckoo stuff, and if you don't know economics, well, then you don't. But you should be reading, and I tell you, no matter which side of the spectrum you are on, the majority of people say that the so-called saving of the banks, saving of financial institutions, and warding off worse development and so on has not put in place a system where this is not exactly as vulnerable as it's ever been. And right now, the world is teetering, wondering, will there be another crisis where you, sucker, colorblinded rapturist, will be picking up the tab in one way, shape, or form. There has been no solution, in spite of the so-called financial regulations, law, and everything. There has been really, for the most part, virtually nothing put into place that would make banks no longer able or ripe and to be using the system or even crashing in the system the way they did before. And there is inflation. Have you noticed how things are costing more and more? And our debt has gone from 9-something trillion to 14-something trillion. He has spent more than any president at any time in any history. No respect. He went into the backyard and took the money off the trees. He invited them in with Geithner at the helm. Take our money. The people of the United States don't need it because we are going to make them all poorer. And how this helps the least advantaged of us, I'd love to know. And jobs lost. And, I was thinking of that Clunker program. He's a dilly. He's a doozy. I think you could get up to, 4,000, 8,000. I forgot how many thousand you could get if you bought a new whatever vehicle at the time this was offered. Well, it ended up, the math of it somehow ended up that the government spent $24,000. When you divide the amount spent allotted for the program and the number of vehicles purchased under it, it ended up each vehicle cost $24,000 somehow. Furthermore, in thinking about the clunker program and the people that would be adversely impacted by it, I find it rather ironic that all those vehicles, or many of the vehicles that are at the low cost end, like $500, and there are such vehicles, $1,000, $1,200, and all their parts were getting crushed in our heritage of these old vehicles, supposedly because the environment couldn't take the minuscule, in the bigger scheme of things, extra carbon that they were releasing into the atmosphere. And who gets stuck with after a program like that? People who need to buy very inexpensive vehicles, which likely cost more now, are not that available, or well, certainly they're newer cars, and all those parts too that would have been used had we had those vehicles still around. So, you know, kind of crazy stuff, and stuff that really, does it do good or does it do not good? Now, let me be a little more blunt also in wanting to say that not only is there unreality, magical thinking, great egocentrism, which often means that there is lack of ego. That's usually, dynamically what it goes, but also that there is deception, that there is not quite, in fact, sometimes blatantly telling it not like it is, and not what's being done, a cover, a decoy, and I have outlined a lot of these deceptions in the past, and it's like, what it's like really is like, are you going to believe Obama or your lying eyes? You know, are you going to believe hope or are you going to believe evidence? Let's take a look at some of those lies. For example, he recently said, we stabilized the financial system. I dare you to find writers that would say, from the right or the left, and I read them a lot, I dare you to find writers in the know who will tell you that the financial system is stable. In fact, from both the right and left, articles are written and written and written about how unstable and unresolved the financial system problem is. He said recently, we made sure that we ended one war and started putting another war on a path where we could start it should be bringing, but it's quoted here, where we could start bring more troops home. Start to bring more troops home, I guess it should read. Well, the deception is going to take a little bit out of Iraq, but still leave a huge contingent there so that you will think that he is fulfilling his promise on Iraq. And what is with these wars that he's fighting, by the way? Do you realize that we're in more wars, more guck, more mud, knee-deep in the muddy, and the damn fool says to go on is an expression from the Vietnam War? Do you understand how much more massively, quietly, and without you really realizing it, we are in war, we are in Iraq, we will still be in Iraq, in spite of that he's going to show some people leaving Iraq. We're in Afghanistan more heavily than ever before, and in more brutal, that is a very brutal war going on in Afghanistan. We're in Somalia, we're in Libya, bombing with the most mega bombs, the all-out war, very, very bad, brutal war over there. We're in Yemen, bombing like crazy, and we're in Pakistan to the degree that they're letting us in still. Look at how this expansion, what is going on? Could people not call him a baby killer? Could people not call him a murderer the way Code Pink used to call people such things, and other people? And many Democrats are getting upset that these wars are getting too big, too undeclared, and done just at the whim of the president and so on. Do you understand that for this country that was supposed to be not that worthy on the basis that it was imperialistic and fought wars around the world, boy, are we in some wars now. Are we not? Are we not? So, and by the way, too, you know, he did not declare, I'm going to talk about, you know, the deceptiveness. He did not go to Congress to go into Libya, okay? And of course that made them upset, but, you know, his backers are still behind him to a degree. And he lied. He said that in the beginning, in a few days' time after he started with NATO to go into Libya, he said that there were no boots on the ground. And there were boots on the ground. And now he's telling the Congress he doesn't need to go to them about the Libyan war, which they're telling him he's got to come and do, including Democrats. And he's saying, no, it's not a war because we haven't had any action with hostile forces. In other words, us against Gaddafi's people kind of thing. And some people from the military are saying, oh, yes, we do. Oh, yes, we do. These are just examples upon examples upon examples. He said, we restored a sense around the world of what American values and ideals are all about. Oh, really? The people in Egypt say, don't talk to us about Obama. He has nothing to do with this revolution. The person in Syria has nothing to do with him. The people in Pakistan say, you're not even welcome here anymore. And they've arrested the people that helped with the bin Laden, helped him get bin Laden. So I'm not sure that we've restored what American values and ideals are all about. What are those values and ideals right now with us bombing in many countries? In how many countries is that? Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Pakistan, 5 countries that we know of.
And Somalia, which is 6 countries, as well as various other operations. This president is expanding across the globe.
We had to address an auto industry that was on the verge of liquidation. Oh, really? Well, it should have been liquidated by proper means, where it would have gone into a legal bankruptcy in an ordered, structured way and resolved its issues in the way we've resolved issues with excellent bankruptcy laws for decades and decades in the United States. Instead of throwing out the bondholders, which again is lawlessness, and putting in the unions. And what is his insistence? And well, they're like his fighting force. They're his fighting force for his leftist policy. And then he said we had to get the economy moving again and we had to get jobs created again. Oh, really? And what did you do about it, Mr. Obama? When you were working on the START treaty, when you were working on health, well, you weren't working. You were flying around and partying and having sports teams and giving these speeches that people tend to like. I don't know what you, but really? When were you working on getting the economy moving again? I don't think he would know what that means anyway. He's not that, he's not that deep and broad. No, he's not. No, he's not. Fascism. His affiliation with GE, and GE's got ads now for all the new products. I just heard them come on the TV. This is really creepy. This is really makes you cringe because GE now is joined at the hip. Obama's got Google, GE's got his people. They have the smart grid. They have the nuclear new stuff. They have the new light bulbs that are going to cost an arm and a leg. They have all these things in place, and they're coming on strong, and they're aligned with the government, and boy, he wants that government to be right in there with business and the corporations. Personally, I'm not favorable to corporations of any shape or form as a method of human organization. Put that together with government on top of it. We are going towards absolutely no freedom, economic or otherwise. Guess what? He gave $2 billion to Brazil to help it with oil exploration. I'm not for doing deep oil exploration necessarily, but he gives money to Brazil to do it. And guess what? He gives money and some loans to a company that Soros, his friend that I spoke about earlier on, who gets in on this deal just at the same time that the president happens to give a nice chunk of money to this company in Brazil. In Brazil. He likes what's going on in Brazil, how they're coming along. He likes how they're coming along in India. And he wants us to come less along in the United States. Oh, and he's going to lie in the re-election. He's going to say how Chrysler and GM have paid off a lot of the money, most of it. Don't believe it. They're way behind. We're going to likely end up losing money on those deals. There are tax breaks they got into the future. There are credits to cars that may be purchased. There's loans still outstanding. They pay one off with another one. Oh boy, don't believe it, but it will be and in Colorblinded Rapture, you'll just watch and say, oh, well, yeah, you'll just accept it. You'll just accept it. Recently, I forgot which country it was about. He said, when he went to Europe, wasn't it? And he was talking about certain Arab countries. He said, oh, yeah, we'll give them some money. He volunteered. He's going to give them some money. Our Medicaid money, our Social Security money, our highways and bridges money, our money that we spend on wars that we don't need. And what is this craziness that the world is on fire now? How does it get to be that the United States is out there putting several countries on fire at once? How does that happen? What about housing? Not a thing. In fact, it's gotten worse. And I keep telling you, there was a time his administration floated an idea that the government would take over deeds of people's homes. And I guess you could pay them whatever. That didn't go over very well. But why? Why have they allowed this to persist as it has? Why have they allowed that even people who went into programs presumably to remediate their situation ended up worse than if they never went into the program at all? Our schools are a mess. Good luck if the schools are anything but worse off for all the crazy stuff going on in the school system and in trying to effect change, hope. Let's look at the evidence. And then there's Muslim proclivity. I'm not going to get into that today. We've been into it before, but there are many, many examples of that. So I would stop here for the moment and come with a few points. We're being left with a great big mess. This guy's disassembling the place, causing us to go down. For whatever reason, you come up with a reason. If you can piece together all the sometimes contradictory and seemingly non-understandable ways that things go on now with this administration, we've got a big mess. And I would like you to think about where you're going to be into the near future and beyond based on the progression that's going right now. What, by magic? By magic somehow it's going to be better? I'm not saying we had the perfect system. Far from it. Far from it. It needed a lot of work. But it doesn't need this kind of destruction. It doesn't need this kind of disdain. And you don't know how good something is until you lose it. Did it need a lot of work? Yes, it did. But is this the way to go about it? Absolutely not. And I would like to say, too, that nobody has dibs on another person's life. What they should eat, how much they should weigh, where they should work, if they should be in a union, if the government should tell you which medical procedures you should have. Nobody has dibs on another person's life. And if you want to be colorblinded by great thinking, why don't you tune in to some of the great academic intellectuals who write, for example, on WorldNet Daily, brilliantly all the time, or some of the great titans in Wall Street kind of things, or I shouldn't say Wall Street, but financial matters. Why don't you follow some of these, as far as the color issue, colorblinded, this and that, people have made, there are examples to look after and be in awe of all over the place, thank God. And more should be coming. More should be coming all the time. And as far as that goes, I'd like to say to young people, if any of you have been watching such a sort of serious show as this one, please, 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 anybody can still get ahead. You've got to put your nose to the grindstone. Don't lose your life. Don't waste your life. Don't go into cowardly kind of things just because you look around and you think there's no way out, but to do, to get into thuggishness or whatever. Please, please, everybody, you've got a life and you can do something with it, but you gotta get your act together and go at it really, really, really hard. Really, really hard. And it is possible. So youth, and there are so many examples, and there's been so much advancement and so much achievement to date. And there's a whole lot of mixing going on through the country. And we've been trying, and let us try more. Let us try more. I'd like to say about Mr. Weiner a bit. At the time I'm talking to you, he has already resigned. Technically not, but he's made the speech about resigning, that he will. And I'd like to say I've had to hear, of course, because it's been in the media so much, quite a few opinions about it and so on. And one that I haven't heard that rings truest to me is what this guy did, number one, is the kind of thing that kids do. When they're 6 and 7 or when they're teenagers, I've seen teenagers doing this kind of stuff in a library once on a computer with each other, showing their parts or talking about their parts. Kids do this, number one. I don't know how old he is, in his 40s or whatever, not grown men, hopefully, married or otherwise, number one. Number two, what he did, these women were apparently strangers from what little I know, and they merely were on his Twitter feed because they liked him, they liked his politics or whatever, and so they were following it on that basis. And from that point of view, he goes and shows them his penis, his random penis, engorged, erect. And I say to you, this is the point that I don't hear people opining about. I say to you, no, this is not the same as some of the other so-called scandals that have happened involving sex, because this kind of a thing of particularly just putting your genital part right into the face of the observer, whom you've never met and is only a stranger trying to follow your politics, is naked, no pun intended, aggression. In this case, it's aggression against women. It is a power play, aggressive act. And on that basis, no one has come forward with that. The true significance of why what he did is so bad. Now, if somebody goes to a prostitute, they bring up the case of Vitter. I haven't known about it at all, but apparently he went to a brothel and paid for sex, apparently. I guess he had to pay, unless he gets special deals. But when someone is working as a prostitute for the purpose of a prostitute, and a person goes to visit that person and engages their services, it's all out in the open. One is selling something, one is buying something, and the deal is consummated, and that's what the woman wants to do. In this case, we have presumably, at least in most of them, non-prostitute women, just ordinary women, trying to take part in, being part of the politics of the country, getting aggressed upon like this when they're not there for sexual favors. They're not showing a shingle that they're prostitutes. And even if they were, there was no deal transpiring between the two. It was just a naked aggression onto the screen of whomever was at the receiving end. And this is the basis on which I say it is not like something of a Mr. Vitter, for example. And I would say to women, too, that don't think this is nothing, there's something to laugh about. And if boys come at you and all they want to do is show you their penis in so many words, they don't want to pay attention to you, they don't want to know you, they don't want to call you, they don't want to take walks with you, they don't want to... Forget it, ladies. Forget it. Don't deal with men like this. You know the bad thing about this Weiner deal, too? Is that it sets the standard, as did the Clinton thing, it sets a standard across the nation for what kind of behavior, if not acceptable, at least is promulgated around the country. If it's done by the senator, it blankets the country as a kind of behavior. And that's what's wrong with it, too. And ladies, accepting a man's genitalia is something done at the end of under entirely different circumstances for entirely different reasons, I hope. I hope, ladies. Two other things I'd like to say before leaving. Number one, the weather, people lament, is so bad and they're worried, they're upset. And when I tell them it's mathematical, it's something that you can know from sense of just adding things up, that they're real, and if there's X and there's Y and Z and they combine, this is what happens. And the weather will be getting more aberrant, more dangerous, more inconvenient, more swallowing up of all we own and have and need and delaying us and taking our time and diverting us. Yes, weather will continue to get worse. It's been getting worse for many, many years now. And it's surprising to me that people don't understand this. They're shocked. They're like, really? What do you think, tomorrow we're suddenly going to have real winters that merge into real springs, that merge into real summers? So a note on the weather. It's very sad that more, just like with the styrofoam, with the polystyrene, it's sad that people just need to be told, wouldn't you kind of know these things just from using your head on more than birds or we or whatever the heck those things are. You know, that's it. Where are our heads, you know, what someone was wearing at the show last night, those things that are in the media about celebrities all the time that are like obsessions with our culture. And finally, I would like to say, this warmed my heart. I'm not a sports person whatsoever. I went to one Bruins game way back when they were top stuff in Boston. Didn't understand the game. Didn't particularly take to the game. I do remember the names Bobby Orr, Cam Neely, some other names, if they were said, I would recognize them. I do remember Boston at that time and place. And even though I don't really care about sports except to be able to say a few things to people I interact with, of course, when I heard about the Bruins, you know, going on that last game, something in me was stirred. Something in me, warm and nice, was stirred. Something that the Bruins was something wholesome. Maybe I'm wrong, and Boston was more wholesome. And you know what? It's because it was the kind of people that were straight ahead and regular and not conflicted and complex and just went out and tried really hard and were good. And the only one I can think of, because I don't know enough at the tip of my fingers, but is Larry Bird too. Remember Larry Bird of the Celtics? Things that you can take to the bank as a good way to behave. The Bruins, for something underneath of what it stands for. And I, too, involuntarily just went, yeah, you know, I wanted them to win. I understand it for once in my life. So 3 cheers to the Bruins. And I say, oh, Boston, you're my home. Thank you, Boston. So I say to you, good night. God bless. God bless the United States of America. And let's get much smarter. Your life is not for just having the easy road. Your life is for working hard, being aware, and getting to be all that you can be. Thank you very much. Good night.